In this video, you will get lessons from this #1 bestseller book. I'm offering this lesson to you for free as part of my company's mission to help you reach your music dreams and have fun along the way. You will find the playlist with all videos from this course in the video description and comments. There may be information in previous videos that will make the video you are watching now easier to understand. I recommend watching the videos in order. Hi, I'm Dan Spencer, author of the Best Music Theory Book for Beginners. Over 5,000 people have purchased this book, pushing it to hit #1 bestseller in its category on Amazon. Finally, if you would like to get this #1 book, the workbook, for free, along with quizzes, interactive flashcards, and more bonuses, links are in the video description and in the comments. And now, here is the next lesson and the Best Music Theory course, Level 1. Congratulations on making it to Harmony 1, where we're going to be talking about triads. Now, before we get into triads, let's define harmony and listen to some examples and watch some video. So harmony is when two or more pitches or notes sound at the same time. Melody is horizontal. We can think about melody. We have one note at a time. You know, it happens first note, second note, third note, fourth note. Whereas harmony happens vertically because we stack notes on each other, just like a harmonic simple interval where we had those note heads right on top of each other. So even though the note heads, if we look at two harmonic intervals in a row, for example, we can see that sure enough, they're happening from left to right, just like you would read regular notes. There's also something happening up and down. So when we think about harmony, it's not just happening from left to right, it's also happening up and down because we're stacking notes on top of each other. So let's take a moment and listen to example 76 together. We're going to listen one time and then I'll break it down on the second time through. So this time I'm going to talk through it. Okay, so already, you remember our example for melody, we had one line. Now we have 3 lines, and you can hear there's 3 different sounds happening at the same time for each one of these dots right here. You can see that each one of these dots, don't mind the playhead there. Again, 3 sounds together at the same time, 3 new sounds together. So you can see that it is indeed happening from left to right, but there also is something happening from top to bottom, or bottom to top. So that is harmony. Multiple notes happening together at the same time, from left to right, through time, just like regular single notes happen. But that there's this extra thing, we're stacking all these notes on top of each other to create very different sounds than one note at a time. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand what a chord is. You're also going to understand the 2 sides of the argument as to whether an interval is a type of a chord. Here we go. So a chord is a harmony. Harmony makes chords. Chords are a way of giving names to and describing the quality of different harmonies. So we can have this harmony here, and we're going to call that a specific chord. This harmony, which is different, we're going to have a different chord name and a different chord quality for that. Just like we called scales a major scale and the quality was major, or a natural minor scale and the quality was minor. We're going to have major chords, we're going to have minor chords. All those different quality words you've learned from your scales and your intervals, we're going to use those for chords as well. The next question is it a chord or is it an interval? Because when you were writing harmonic intervals and looking at harmonic intervals, there were 2 notes at the same time, and the very fact that it's called a harmonic interval means that, well, harmony is happening. And if we know that harmony makes chords, then doesn't it make sense that an interval, because it's a harmony, would be a chord? Well, there's two different ways of looking at this. The first way of looking at it is that any two notes sounded at the same time are an interval, but they are not a chord. That's the first school of thought. The second way of thinking about it is any two notes sounded at the same time can be classified as an interval and as a dyad, D-Y-A-D, which is a type of two-note chord. You could also think of two notes at a time as a chord fragment, and we will get into chord fragments not in Theory 1, but later on. So the idea is that a chord is a harmony that conveys feeling, emotion, and meaning. And that's the quality. The quality of the chord is conveying something. Remember, just like with the intervals, the quality meant something. Perfect meant that it was more stable, right? Augmented meant, ooh, there was something wild going on there. It wasn't quite stable. Diminished, lots of friction there. So the idea is that you want to be able to communicate ideas and functions of chords with their names. And the argument is that if you only have two notes, that sound is not complex enough to imply the feeling and the emotion and the meaning. So what do you think of this? Which school of thought do you like? Personally, I like school of thought number 2. I like to think of two-note chords as dyads. That's also because as a guitar player, which is my primary harmonic instrument, so my primary melodic instrument would be my voice, that sings one note at a time, but to play two notes at a time to create harmonies, my main instrument would be the guitar. There's a lot of times, especially in jazz, when you just play dyads all day and you think of them as chords. So do you think that intervals convey emotion and meaning? Do you think that intervals should just be called intervals? I think we should save the 3 notes for the chord versus 2 notes for the interval. There is no right answer. Or maybe there is, and we just haven't found it yet. Who knows? Hope your mind's spinning and you're thinking about things. Don't worry about this lesson too much. This was just a little fun little tangent to go on to talk about the difference between intervals and chords. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn about triads and chord tones. So triads are 3-note chords that are created with particular intervals. Not all 3-note chords are triads. So all triads are 3-note chords, but there's other 3-note chords out there that are not triads. So let's talk about chord tones, and you're going to understand more what constitutes a triad as we go through this lesson and the next couple of lessons. So chord tones are the notes that are in a chord. Chord tones have names just like scale degrees, but chord tones are not scale degrees because they're part of a chord, not a scale. In a scale, one note happens at a time. In a chord, a bunch of notes happen at the same time, so we're going to give them different names so we can keep track whether we're talking about a scale or a chord. Now, even though chord tones are not scale degrees, because you already understand scale degrees, we're going to think about chord tones relating to scale degrees that you already know to help them make sense for you. So we have 3 chord tones and triads because we have, well, 3 notes. The name of the first note is called the root. All other notes in the chord are going to be related to the root, just like in scales, all scale degrees are related to the tonic. So the root is kind of like the tonic. The next note in a triad is going to be the third. The third is related to a scale degree 3 from a major scale or scale degree flat 3 from a natural minor scale. Remember that the flat 3 does not mean the note is flat. It means it's lowered down by 1/2 step when compared to the major scale. Another way of thinking about that is that the third, when it is flat 3, is going to be 3/2 steps away from the root, a minor third, as opposed to 4/2 steps away from the root, the interval of a major third. You see how the intervals are now playing into understanding chords. One more note on the third before we move forward is the third in minor chords Sometimes musicians will say the flat third or the flat three to be specific that they're talking about a minor chord. Now, these terms are not perfect because we could also say the flat three for the scale of a natural minor scale. So these terms are not perfect for describing a chord, but they get the job done most of the time. And for a lot of musicians who don't understand a lot of music theory or have not been able to get music theory education, this is the way that they express and understand there being a minor third in a chord. The last part of a chord for us to talk about is the fifth. The fifth is related to scale degree 5. So in summary, we have the root, which is essentially like scale degree 1 or the tonic. We're going to have the third, which is like scale degree 3 from a major scale or scale degree flat 3 from a natural minor scale, which is almost like the mediant. So the third is like the mediant. And then we have the fifth of the chord. The fifth is going to be like scale degree 5 or the dominant. In the next lesson, we are going to do a deep dive into both a major and minor triad and see these terms in application. I will see you there. In this lesson, you are going to see and understand how the terms root, third, and fifth work in a triad. So we're going to start off by looking at C major. We're going to look at the chord tones. Remember, the chord tones are just quite simply the notes in a chord. And we're going to see how they relate to scale degrees. We're also going to review their names. So whenever we want to make a major chord, we're going to take the root, third, and fifth. Another way of thinking about that is scale degree 1, scale degree 3, and scale degree 5 from the major scale, and we're going to stack them all on top of each other. So root scale degree 1 is C. Third, scale degree 3, is E. And the fifth, scale degree 5, is G. We stack those all on top of each other, root, third, and fifth, and that's how we get a C major triad. That right there is a C major triad, C, E, and G. Now let's break down a minor triad. So for a minor triad, we're going to take the root, third, and fifth, or scale degree 1, flat 3, and 5 from a natural minor scale, and we're going to stack them all on top of each other. So in this case, we're going to use an A natural minor scale. So A is going to be scale degree 1, which we're going to call the root because it's for a chord. C is going to be scale degree flat 3, which we're going to call the third. And then E is going to be scale degree 5, which we're going to call the fifth. And we're going to take the root, third, and fifth, or A, C, and E. We're going to stack them all on top of each other, A, C, E, to create a minor triad, or to give it its full name, an A minor triad with root, third, and fifth all stacked on top of each other. In summary, all major and minor triads are built with 3 chord tones, a root, third, and fifth. And we can think about the root, third, and fifth for a major triad as coming from scale degree 1, 3, and 5 of a major scale. And we can think about the root, third, and fifth for a minor triad as coming from scale degree 1, flat 3, and 5 from a natural minor scale. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to name a triad and also how to think about naming triads. So whenever we talk about naming a triad, we're always going to start with the root note or the root. And that's going to be the letter name of the chord. For example, in an A minor triad, A is the root. In a C major triad, C is the root. And in an E minor triad, E is the root. And in a G major triad, G is the root. So whatever the note name, the letter name from the musical alphabet that the root is, so whatever letter from the full musical alphabet is the root, that's going to be the first part of the name of the chord. Second, we'll name the chord quality. So chord quality defines whether the chord is major or minor. In an A minor chord, the quality is minor. In a C major, the quality is major. So let's say the root note is E and the quality of the chord is minor. You're going to call the chord E minor. whenever you want to write down just a letter representation of a chord, it's going to be called a chord symbol. I'm going to give you some examples of some chord symbols right now. So the chord symbol for C major is just C. That's it. The chord symbol for G major is just G. The chord symbol for A minor is A and a minus sign. The chord symbol for E minor is E and a minus sign. That's it. So whenever we have a minor chord, we're going to show the quality of it being minor just by writing a little minus sign after the musical alphabet letter that is the root of the chord. So let's understand a little bit more about these chord names. So whenever you see a C or a G, we're always obviously assuming that it's major. Now here's where it gets interesting too, is that oftentimes musicians will not actually say major when they're talking or writing a chord. So you'll notice that when I wrote the chord symbol for C, I just wrote a C. I didn't put like a C, M for major or anything like that. No, it's just C. So when you talk about major chords, when musicians talk about major chords, if they say a C chord, what they mean is a C major chord. They're assuming the chord is going to be major. If you say an F chord, it's an F major chord. If they say a G chord, what they mean is a G major chord. The only time they're going to specify or talk about the quality of the chord is for minor chords, in which case they would say an A minor chord. They might say an E minor chord. You're always going to say minor. Now, there's a couple of different ways you will see minor chords written. Out in the real world, you might see E-M-I-N for E minor. You might see E with a small m next to it, but E with a minus sign, that is the current and modern way of writing it, and that's how you should write it. And you just might see those other ways of writing minor chords out there. Just as a heads up, what they mean is E minor, and they're just not writing it with a minus sign. But in this course and in this book and in your workbook, you will be writing minor chords with a minus sign. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand how to think about major triads in terms of intervals. So let's get started. The quality of the chord for a major triad is major. We know that we can make a major triad from scale degree 1, 3, and 5 of a major scale, but we're going to call them root, third, and fifth because it's a chord, it's not a scale. There is an interval of a major third from scale degree 1, or the root, to scale degree 3, which is the third. Let's zoom in and take a look at that. See that? There you go. There's a major third. From C to E is an interval of a major third. Then from scale degree 3 to scale degree 5, or the third to the fifth, from E to G is an interval of a minor third. And we can count that. E to F, F sharp to G flat to G. That's going to be 1, 2, 3 half steps, which is going to be the interval of a minor third. Lastly, the interval from the root to the fifth, or if you're thinking about it in a scale way, scale degree 1 to scale degree 5, C to G, is a perfect fifth. That's the interval. Now, what's interesting is that all major triads, without exception, once you memorize these intervals, you will know every single major triad. All major triads are a major third from the root to the third. They are a minor third from the third to the fifth, and a perfect fifth from the root to the fifth. This is how all major triads work. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break down a G major triad. So we're going to have a G, a B, and a D. So from G to B, G to G sharp or A flat, G sharp or A flat to A to A sharp or B flat, A sharp or B flat to B. That's 4 half steps. So this right here is a major third. Now let's break down B to D. From B to C, that's 1 half step. From C to C sharp or D flat, that's 2. From D sharp or D flat to D, that's 3. That, sure enough, is going to be a minor third. Now let's double check our G to our D. From G to G sharp or A flat, that's 1/2 step. To A, that's 2. To A sharp or B flat, that's 3. To B, that's 4. To C, that's 5. To C sharp or D flat, that's 6. From C sharp or D flat to D, that is 7. That's a perfect fifth right there. Perfect fifth. So we can see that these intervals exist and work for all major triads. It does not matter what note you start on, as long as you do a major third from the root to the third, a minor third from the third to the fifth, and a perfect fifth from the root to the fifth, you will always have a major triad. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand how to break down a minor triad using intervals and a system that works for all minor triads. Doesn't matter what note from the full musical alphabet they start on. So the quality of the chord is minor. We're going to construct the chord or make the chord from 1, flat 3, and 5 of a natural minor scale. There's an interval of a minor third from root to third. We can also think of that as scale degree 1 to scale degree flat 3 if you want to think about it as a scale. And there's an interval of a major third from the third to the fifth, or scale degree 3 to scale degree 5 if you're thinking about it like a natural minor scale. And then we have an interval of a perfect fifth from the root to the fifth, or from scale degree 1 to scale degree 5 if you're thinking about it in terms of scales. So let's go in and prove this out, and then we'll also break down and understand an E minor triad. So from A to C, we have A to A sharp, a B flat, that's 1/2 step. To B, that's 2. To C, that's 3. 3/2 steps is an interval of a minor third. So that's great. We've got the minor third there. Now from C to E, from C to C sharp or D flat, from C sharp or D flat to D, from D to D sharp or E flat to E, that is 4/2 steps. 4/2 steps is a major third. That's an interval of a major third. So that's all good. Now we want 7/2 steps to get our perfect fifth. So we're going to go from A to A sharp or B flat to B to C sharp or D flat to D sharp or E flat to E. Sure enough, 7/2 steps. That gets us our perfect fifth. What I'm trying to say is all minor triads are going to be a minor third from root to third, a major third from third to fifth, and a perfect fifth from root to fifth. All minor triads. So let's prove that out with an E minor triad. So we're going to write an E, a G, and a B. Okay, let's prove this out, people. So we're looking for a minor third from root to third. So the root is E, the third is G, the fifth is B. So from E to G, we have E to F sharp or G flat to G. That's 3/2 steps. Sure enough, 3/2 steps is the interval of a minor third. Now we're looking for a major third from G to B. G to G sharp or A flat. G sharp or A flat to A. A to A sharp or B flat. A sharp or B flat to B. That's 4/2 steps. That's going to be a major third. Now lastly, we want 7/2 steps for a perfect fifth from the root to the fifth. So let's count it out. E to F to F sharp or G flat, F sharp or G flat to G, G to G sharp or A flat, G sharp or A flat to A to A sharp or B flat, A sharp or B flat to B. That is 7. Boom. Perfect fifth. So every single minor triad ever, does not matter what note of the full musical alphabet you start on, between the root to the third is always going to be a minor third. From the third to the fifth is always a major third. And from the root to the fifth is always a perfect fifth. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to write triads, which is basically the same rules as writing stems for intervals, which was basically the same rules as writing stems for single notes, just adding a little extra on the end. So we're always going to think about the note head that is closest to the open end of the stem. And just as a quick reminder for you, the open end of the stem is right here. And this right here is the note head that is closest to the open end of the stem. So just like with intervals, the stem length is going to be 4 staff lines long from the note head closest to the open end of the staff. Just like writing regular notes, and then you just extend the stem up to get the other 2 notes of the triad. If the note head closest to the open end of the stem is 1 ledger line above or below the staff, the stem length remains 4 staff lines long. Same exact as intervals. If the note head closest to the open end of the stem is past 1 ledger line above or below the staff, the stem reaches to line 3 of the staff. Same as intervals, same as single notes. You just extend the stem a little bit to catch the extra notes. Now here's where you need a new piece of information, and that is the outer note head. So the outer note heads of the triad are, well, the notes that are on the outside. So we can think of it as a sandwich. This is the bread, and this is whatever good stuff you like to put in your sandwiches. So the outer note heads are the bread. So if the outer note head furthest away from line 3 of the staff is above line 3, stem down. If the outer note head furthest away from line 3 of the staff is below line 3, stem up. This is the same exact style rules as for intervals. And if the outer note heads are the same distance from line 3 of the staff, then stem down. That's it. That literally is it. It's basically the same thing as writing intervals. Now, one pro tip for writing triads. You're going to think of triads as snowmen. Do you want to build a snowman? And that's exactly what it's going to be. Because all the notes are 1/3 apart, and you're going to see this in the next lesson where we actually walk you through how to write triads on the staff. You're always just going to build a snowman. That's it. Whenever we're writing triads, all you got to do, build a snowman. If you build a snowman, you've got a triad. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand and learn how to write triads on spaces. Another way of thinking this is how to build a snowman on spaces. So you're going to start off by writing a treble clef, a double bar line, and your starting note. I find it also very helpful to keep focused to write the chord symbol above the staff. So you can see from this chord symbol, we're going to try to write an A minor chord. So the root of the chord is going to be A. So the first note we're going to write on the staff is an A. Step number 2 is you're going to write the third in the next space above. So whenever your root is in a space on the staff, the third is going to be in the next space above. Remember, we're building a snowman. And then you write the fifth. The fifth is going to be in the space above the third. Remember, we're building a snowman. So if your root is in a space, your third and your fifth will also be in a staff space, or if it's a ledger line, in a ledger line space. Step 4 is you're going to add any accidentals you need to get the correct interval. Remember, we want, for a minor triad here, we want an interval of a minor third from root to third and a major third from third to fifth. So let's double check our math here. From root to third, we have A to C. We have A sharp or B flat, that's 1. To B to C, that is 3 half steps. That's fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see. We want to see that minor third. Let's check C to E. C to C sharp or D flat is 1, to D is 2, to D sharp or E flat is 3, to E is 4. That's 4 half steps. That's a major third. Very good. We're ready to rock and roll. Step number 5 is add any stems that you need. And you can see here we're following the stem rule of making sure that there are 4 staff lines long coming down just from the note head next to the open end of the stem, and then we just continue adding the stem up to reach the other outer note head, or to reach the note that is the furthest away from the open end of the stem. So in the book example, you just saw an A minor triad starting on a space. I want to show you an E minor triad also starting on a space, but this time on ledger lines well below the staff. So we're going to write out our ledger lines. We need 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. And then we write our E note. And then remember, we just build a snowman in the spaces, space, space, space. That's all we need. And then we can double check the intervals there. So E F, F sharp or G flat, G, that's 3 half steps, that's a minor third. From G to B, G to G sharp or A flat to A sharp or B flat to B, that's 4 half steps, that's a major third. Very good. This right here is an E minor triad. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to write a triad on lines of the staff as opposed to spaces. So step number 1 is you will write your chord symbol, your treble clef, your double bar line, and your root note of the chord. Second, you're going to stack the third on top of the root, and since you started the root on a line, the third's going to go on a line. Then you're going to write your fifth, and because your root's on a line, your third's on a line, your fifth is also going to be on a line. Add in any accidentals needed. Let's double check here. So this is a C major triad, so we need a major third from root to third and a minor third from third to fifth. So we're going to go from C to E. So C, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E. That's 4 half steps. That's good. That's a major third. And then from E to G, E, F, F sharp or G flat, G. That's 3 half steps. Very good. That's exactly what we need for our C major triad. And then we're going to add a stem. And again, the stem rule is that the note head closest to the open end of the stem, we're going to have 4 staff lines long. Sure enough. That's exactly right. And then we're adding extra stem on for the rest of the triad, or if you're writing quarter notes or half notes for your triad. Let's hop into some staff paper and I'll show you another triad written with some ledger lines. So step number 1, write the treble clef. We're going to write the double bar line. I'm going to show you a triad with some ledger lines. We're going to do an A minor triad, so we're going to start off by writing an A minor chord symbol above the staff to make sure we know what we're doing. Then we're going to go down and set ourselves up down to an A3 below the staff. We need 2 ledger lines. Okay, and we start off by writing our A note on line 1, and then we're just going to build a snowman on the lines, because if the root's on a line, that means the third and the fifth is also on a line. There we go. Root, third, fifth. Now let's count our intervals to make sure we don't need to add any accidentals. So A sharp or B flat, B, C, that's good. We need a minor third because it's a minor triad, so we need a minor third between root and third and a major third between third and fifth. Now if we count from third to fifth, we go C, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E. That is 4 half steps. That's a major third. So this is all good to go. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to write dotted triads. This also works for writing dotted intervals. So basically, if you're going to write a dotted half note with a triad, you're just going to follow the same exact rules for writing a dotted half note, but you're going to write 3 dots. You're going to write a dot for every single one. So as we know, when a note is on a line, you're going to write the dot for that note above that line that the note is on. So for example, we have this D note here is the lowest note of this triad here, and the D note is on line 4 of the staff. So we're going to write the dot in space 4 just above line 4, and you can see as well we have this note head here on this line, and so we're writing the dot above, and then we'd have this, if we imagine this ledger line extending out, writing the dot above what would be the line. And then for spaces, the rules are the same as for writing dotted half notes. Whatever space the note head is in, that's where you put the dot. So again, we're imagining that this right here is a space. We're imagining this here is a space, so that's why we put the dot here. We're also imagining this is a space, and that's why we put the dot there. So let's talk about how to write ties between triads. So 2 ties out of the 3 are always going to curve in the opposite direction of the stem. I'll say that again. 2 of the ties for the triad will always curve in the opposite direction of the stem. So stem up, the ties curve down. Stem down, the ties curve up. So the way this works is for stem down notes, the top 2 ties will curve over, And for stem up notes, the bottom two ties curve under. So we can see here we have a stem down note, and sure enough, the top two ties are arching or curving over. Here we have a stem up note, and the bottom two ties are curving under, and it does not matter where the note heads are on the staff or ledger lines. All we're going to pay attention to for writing ties and knowing which direction to curve the ties in is the direction of the stem. Now you can, when you're on ledger lines, flatten the ties slightly, make them not quite so archy so that they don't actually touch the ledger lines. And you can see that here. These top two ties, we have some space between the tie and the ledger lines. So we can very clearly see the tie connecting the notes, but it's not actually interfering or touching the ledger lines. And you can see here, stem up notes, we are tying under. And then you can apply the same rules if we have whole notes. Example that we're tying to or from whole note triads. You can use the rules for writing stem triads to know whether the stem would be up or down. And that rule is whichever note head is the furthest away from line 3, that is going to decide whether it would be stem up or stem down. So look for the note head that's the furthest away from line 3. And if that note head is above line 3, then you're going to treat it like a stem down. And if the note head that is furthest away from line 3 is below the staff, then you're going to treat it like a stem up triad. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you're going to understand what it means when we take triads and we harmonize a major scale to the 5th. You're also going to see how we can get a lot of cool new triads from harmonizing a major scale. So the way we're going to think about this is we have a major scale and we're going to build a triad on top of each scale degree using only notes from that scale. So a triad can be built, build a snowman, or written on every scale degree of any scale, major scales included. This means you take any scale degree, and then we're going to think of that scale degree as a root of a new triad. Then we're going to write a 3rd and a 5th above that scale degree. Now, each new triad is only going to use notes from that scale for the 3rd and the 5th. So for example, when you harmonize a C major scale, you will only use notes from the C major scale in each triad to figure out which accidentals to use. Or in the case of C major, as we know, there's no sharps or flats, so no accidentals to use. So let's take a peek at what that looks like before we learn the next rules. Now you can see here, we have a C, we have a D, E, F, G, and A. Those are the root notes of each chord. The lowest notes of all these triads make up a major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A. We're not going to talk about B for now. And then we can see that we have a snowman built on every single one of these scale degrees. That's going to give us many more triads. So when we do this, when we take all the scale degrees from a scale and we build triads on top of them, this is called harmonizing the scale, because we're taking a scale and we are, well, turning it into harmonies. Now, just like we had a major step formula and a minor step formula, we're going to have a formula for the quality of the chords in every single major scale. So it does not matter what major scale we do. It does not matter what letter of the full musical alphabet we start on. All major scales follow this same pattern, and this is called the triad quality formula. And the triad quality formula goes major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and you should memorize that. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. The quality formula stays the same because the intervals line up for each scale degree for all major scales in the same way. For example, the triad on scale degree 3 is always minor, and the triad built on scale degree 5 is always major. It does not matter what scale we are using. In the next lesson, we are going to unpack these rules and do a deep dive into the C major harmonized scale. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're doing a deep dive into unpacking the C major scale harmonized to the fifth, which means that the fifth is going to be the highest note of each chord. So let's start by looking at our scale. So we have scale degree 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 from a C major scale. Sure enough, C, D, E, F, G, and A. Those are the roots of all the chords. Now we do have our triad quality formula showing up alive and well of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and we can even prove that out. So C to E to G, and notice we're only using notes from the C major scale for all of these chords. So we're only ever going to use a C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. That's the only type of notes we're going to use. So on scale degree 1, we start on C, C to C sharp, D flat, to D sharp, E flat, to E, C to E, that's a major third, very good. E to F, F to F sharp or G flat, F sharp or G flat to G, that's 3 half steps, that's a minor third. So sure enough, we do have a major triad on 1. Now, supposedly, we have a minor triad on scale degree 2. So for a minor triad, we should have a minor third between the root and the third, and a major third between the third and the fifth. So from D to F, we have D to D sharp or E flat to E to F. That's 3 half steps. Sure enough, that is a minor third. Now from F to A, F to F sharp or G flat to G sharp, A flat to A, that is 4 half steps. That is a major third, which means we are all good to go for the D minor, or the second is minor. And you can go through the rest of these triads calculating the distance or the interval between the root and the third and the fifth, and you will see that it lines up with major, minor, minor, major, major, and minor. So let's talk about the new triads that we have because we're harmonizing this scale to the fifth. So a new triad we have is D minor. We've not seen that one before. We also haven't seen an F major before, which is exciting, but we have seen a C major, an E minor, a G major, and an A minor previously. So we have 2 new triads. So let's look at all of our triads by themselves, and sure enough, we can see that all major triads follow the same formula of a major third between root and third, and a minor third between third and fifth, and a perfect fifth between root and fifth. And all the minor triads follow the same interval formula of a minor third between root and third, a major third between third and fifth, and a perfect fifth between root and fifth. And we can see our major chords here. C major, sure enough, major, minor, perfect. An F major chord, from F to A to C, we have a major third, then a minor third. And G major, G to B to D, major third, then minor third. Now for our 3 minor triads, we have a D minor, D to F to A. We have a minor third, then a major third. E minor, E to G to B, minor third, then a major third. And A minor, a minor third to a major third. I will see you in the next lesson where we are going to unpack a G major scale, also harmonized to the fifth. I'll see you there. In this lesson, you are going to understand how to harmonize a G major scale to the fifth and why we have 2 new chords that did not exist previously in the C major scale harmonized to the fifth. Whenever we harmonize scales to the fifth, we're always going to use the notes from that scale. Now, it just so happens that scale degree 7 in G major is an F sharp, and that's the one note that's different between a G major scale and a C major scale. If we think about all the notes, we just take the notes and put them into note buckets. We have C, D, E, G, A, and B, and those are our notes that are in common between a C major and a G major scale. The one note that changes is F, so we have an F sharp. And because we have an F sharp, that is going to change the chords that we can find in a harmonized G major scale, because that F sharp is going to raise all the Fs up 1/2 step, which is going to totally change the quality of those chords. So let's take a look at the chords that we have when we harmonize a G major scale. We have a G, we have an A minor, we have a B minor. That is brand new. We've not seen a B minor before, and the reason we have a B minor is because we have this F sharp here. So that's a brand new chord. We have a C major, we know C major, and we have another new chord, which is D major. And we're going to unpack the difference between D major and D minor in a future lesson. But just it's really cool to think about the fact that when we take all the notes of a C major scale and we put triads and fifths on top of all of them, we get a D minor. But when we do that same thing with a G major scale, we get a D major, and that's because of the F sharp. So let's look at all our new chords that we now get from stacking up the G major scale on top of itself to create these triads. So we have a G major triad, a C major triad, and our new kid on the block, the D major triad. And the reason why this is D major and not D minor is because the F sharp brings the F up 1/2 step. Let's run through that math real quick. So D to D sharp or E flat is 1/2 step, to E is 2, to F is 3, to F sharp is 4. So right there we have 4/2 steps instead of stopping at F, which would get us 3. So that creates a major third interval. And then between F sharp and A, we have F sharp or G flat to G, to G sharp or A flat to A. That's 3/2 steps. That gets us our minor third. And that's how we have a D major triad. We also have a B minor triad. We can run the math on that. So we have B to C is 1/2 step, to C sharp or D flat to D. That's 3/2 steps. So B to D, root to third. That is a minor third. Now from D to F sharp, now you might remember we just did D to F sharp in the previous chord, and it's going to be the same thing here. D to D sharp or E flat to E to F sharp, and that is 4/2 steps, which gets us our major third. And as we know, every minor triad needs to have a minor third from root to third and the interval of a major third from third to fifth. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, your mind will be blown by thinking about some cosmic connections, some cosmic chord connections between different harmonized scales. Buckle in and let's do this. So, there are 4 chords that we can find both in a harmonized C major scale and in a harmonized G major scale. Check this out. So we know we can find a C major triad when we harmonize scale degree 1 in the key of C. And sure enough, when we look at scale degree 1 of C major, we have a C major triad. Now, interestingly, we can also find a C major triad on scale degree 4 of the harmonized G major scale. Let's do the next one. We can find an E minor triad starting on the median or scale degree 3 of C. We can also find an E minor triad starting on the submedian or scale degree 6 of G. Let's prove that out. Scale degree 6 of G, yep, sure enough. E minor, that E starting on E5. And in the key of C major, on the median or scale degree 3, an E minor starting on E4. Let's do the next one. There is a G major triad that we can find on scale degree 1 of a G major scale harmonized, and also on scale degree 5 of a harmonized C major scale. Let's check it out. Scale degree 5 of a harmonized C major scale, sure enough, there is that G major triad. And on scale degree 1 of a G major scale, there is also a G major triad. I am getting to a point with this, by the way, if you're wondering, where is he going with this? The next and last chord for us to find a cosmic chord connection with is the A minor. A minor we can find starting on the supertonic or scale degree 2 of G, and we can also find it on the submedian or scale degree 6 of C. So let's check that out. Sure enough, scale degree 2, supertonic, we have an A minor in the key of G, and scale degree 6 in C major, we have an A minor. Now, these 4 chords, what's the connection and why is it important? It's important because there's only one note that changes from the C major scale to the G major scale, and that is the F sharp. And because they have 6 notes in common, you're going to have common chords that show up in both. So it's to illustrate and help you really understand that connection between those similar notes, that because whenever we harmonize a major scale, we're just taking those same scale notes, those 7 scale notes, we're just stacking them on top of each other to make root thirds and fifths, to make triads, that we're going to have common chords that show up. Now, the one chord that is a big difference between a harmonized C major and a harmonized G major scale is the D chord. And the D chord difference all comes down to the third, because of the F sharp in the G major scale and the F natural in the C major scale. This has been a lesson on cosmic chord connections, and I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to write, and actually more importantly, think about how to write different triads, both from a harmonized C major scale and from a harmonized G major scale. So the step number 1 to write any triad is we need a root third and fifth, a snowman, and we need to write in ledger lines if we need. Now, step number 2, you can do step number 2 in 2 ways. The first way is you think about the intervals. Like we've been talking about, a major triad is going to have the interval of a major third between the root and the third, and the interval of a minor third between the third and the fifth. A minor triad is going to have an interval of a minor third between the root and the third, and the interval of a major third between the third and the fifth. So you can just think about it that way, and that's fine. And if you want to just think about it that way, great. Stop the video here, go have fun, go write your triads. But if you want to learn about the second way of thinking about them, stay tuned. So this is writing without a key signature. This is writing with accidentals. So here's an example. We have a B minor triad that you want to write. So you can think of the B minor as starting on the mediant of G, or scale degree 3 of G. You know the quality is minor because of the quality formula. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. And you also know that the F is sharp because you're harmonizing the G major scale, and there's an F sharp in the G major scale. Or, going back to our first way of thinking, you can just think in terms of intervals. There's a minor third from root to the third, a major third from third to fifth, and a perfect fifth from root to fifth. You count the half steps and check your work, add in an accidental if you need it. Example number 2. Imagine you want to write a C major triad. You can think of a C major triad as starting on either the tonic, or scale degree 1 of C, or on the subdominant, or scale degree 4 of G. You know the quality is major because of the quality formula of C and G major harmonized scales. So C major harmonized is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and G major harmonized is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Now the reason we know it's major is because major, C, if we're thinking about the scale of C, major is our first chord quality. And if we're going to 4 for G major, we can go major, minor, minor, major. So we know scale degree 4 for G, or scale degree 1 for C, is going to be major. So we know C is going to be major. So then you can go ahead and write the triad without adding any accidentals, because you know there's no F notes in this triad, and you know the only note you're going to need to write an accidental on is F. Or you could just think about it with intervals, and you could say to yourself, okay, there's a major third. We have a major triad, so we need a major third from root to third. We need a minor third from third to fifth, and we need a perfect fifth from root to fifth. Count the half steps, check your work. And then what you would do is you would add in the accidentals on any notes that need accidentals according to the harmonized scales, or you add in the accidentals because it would make the intervals correct. So there's 2 ways of thinking about this. You can either think about writing triads in terms of the harmonized scale and thinking about it in relation to all the notes of the scale, or you just think about building the triad with the minor third or major third interval, and then the minor third or major third interval on top of that. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn all about Roman numerals and why they matter in music. So whenever we want to categorize chords or analyze chords or understand chords or categorize or understand music that we want to understand, the music that you love that you want to analyze, you're going to need to know and understand Roman numerals. So there are two types of Roman numerals. There are uppercase Roman numerals and there are lowercase Roman numerals. So these ones right here, these highlighted in blue, are uppercase Roman numerals. Lowercase Roman numerals highlighted in red are here. Now, we can see also that each type of Roman numeral is associated with a regular number. So the number 1 looks like this. The number 2 looks like this. Number 3 like this. Number 4 like this. 5 like this. 6 like this. 7 like this. Basic way that Roman numerals work is that when you have a V equals 5 capital or lowercase, and a 1 equals 1. And so we have 2 1s together, that equals 2. We have 3 1s together, doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase, that's 3. When we put a 1 in front of a 5, it's saying 5 minus 1, so that equals 4. And then if you add a 1 in front of a 5, so 5, 1, that equals 5 plus 1, or 6. So you can see for the number system that we have the number 1, and so we just have 1 lowercase and 1 uppercase. The number 2, we have 2 lowercase, 2 uppercase. The number 3, we have 3 lowercase, 3 uppercase. The number 4, we have a 1 and then a 5, which means 5 minus 1. That's 4 lowercase and uppercase. 5 is just a V, lowercase and uppercase. 6 is going to be a 5 and then a 1. That means 5 plus 1. And then 7 is going to be a 5 and then 2 1s, which means 5 plus 1, which equals 7. So memorize these Roman numerals if you don't know them already. Memorize how they work and memorize each number these Roman numerals are associated with. Now, the reason why we need the lowercase and the uppercase Roman numerals is because we're going to use lowercase Roman numerals to describe minor chords. So the Roman numerals is actually going to show the quality. And uppercase Roman numerals are going to show major chords, so they are also going to show a quality. So we're going to show the difference between major and minor chords with Roman numerals. Minor chords are going to get lowercase Roman numerals. Major chords are going to get uppercase Roman numerals. And you will see Roman numerals abbreviated as RN, Roman numerals. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to see a side-by-side comparison of a harmonized G and C major scale to the 5th with chord symbols, with Roman numerals, with quality formulas, and scale degrees. So let's jump straight in. So we can see just before we start off that we'll have our scale degrees here. We'll have our quality formula here. Roman numerals will be here. The key of C major will be here. The key of G major will be here. So we're going to compare these straight up and down. So let's look here. Scale degree 1. The quality of the chord is going to be major. The Roman numeral is going to be an uppercase Roman numeral 1. Now here's where it gets interesting. In the key of C major, the chord would be C, and in the key of G major, the chord would be G. Now in both cases, we're going to use the Roman numeral 1. The Roman numeral 1, we're always going to use that to show the chord that is on scale degree 1. Doesn't matter what the key is. Let's look at scale degree 2. So for scale degree 2, we know the quality is going to be minor. It doesn't matter what scale we are using to harmonize. The triad that is built on scale degree 2 is always going to be minor. So we can see here that in the key of C major, Scale degree 2 is D, and we'd have a D minor. In the key of G major, scale degree 2 would be A, so we have A minor. Let's look at scale degree 3. So in scale degree 3, we know the quality of the chord is minor. The Roman numeral is a lowercase 3. In the case of C major, scale degree 3 would be E. In the case of G major, scale degree 3 would be B. And they're both going to be minor. So that's how we get E minor for C major and B minor for G major. Let's look at scale degree 4. The triad that is built on scale degree 4 is always major. It does not matter what scale we are using. Always, 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 the triad that we build on scale degree 4 is going to be a major triad. So we have an uppercase Roman numeral 4. In the key of C, the fourth scale degree is F, so we have an F major triad. In the key of G, the fourth scale degree is C, so we have a C major triad. Scale degree 5. All triads that are built for any scale on scale degree 5, when we harmonize a scale, are always going to be major. So we're going to show that with an uppercase 5 Roman numeral. And then scale degree 5 in a C major scale would be G, so we're going to have a G major chord. And scale degree 5 in a G major scale would be D, so we'll have a D major chord there. Scale degree 6 is always minor, so we're going to show that with a lowercase Roman numeral 6. Scale degree 6 in a C major scale is A, and the quality is going to be minor. Scale degree 6 for a G major scale is E, and then we're going to have an E minor. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn how to write a harmonized major scale to the 5th. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to set yourself up with either an entire line of staff or half a line of blank staff. You're going to write a treble clef, a double bar line, and then a major scale up to scale degree 6 with chord symbols, and that'll look like this if it's a G major scale. And in this one, we will be adding accidentals because we're not actually going to add a key signature. Step number 2, you've got to build a snowman on every single scale degree that you have written out. So you have written out scale degrees 1 through 6. Just build a snowman. Don't worry about the accidentals. Don't count the major thirds, the minor thirds. Just write snowmen. Then step number 3, we've got to think about the thirds, whether it's a major third or a minor third, the quality of the chord, to make sure that if accidentals are needed, you can put in any accidentals. Now, when you write a harmonized major scale with a key signature, you actually have a little less work to do. So you're going to start off just the same, writing a treble clef, this time a key signature, and then the scale up to scale degree 6 with a double bar line. Add the chord symbols in on top. Then you've got to build a snowman on every single scale degree. And then what you can do for bonus is, because you don't have to go in and add those accidentals because this key signature is going to take care of the accidentals, you can go in and write your Roman numerals for bonus points. All right. So we're going to start with a treble clef. We're going to write a double bar line over here. And then we're going to write out a scale. I'm going to do C major starting on C4, C, D, E, F, G, A. Remember, only going up to scale degree 6. Now, because C major, there are no sharps or flats, we could say this is with a key signature, or we'd say it's not with a key signature. It doesn't really matter because there are no sharps or flats. Okay, now step number 2 is we have to build a snowman for every single scale degree. And again, make your writing neater than mine. Oh boy. Yeah, let's keep it going. Like I said, when I was in music school, every single one of my teachers always was like, Dan, could you please write a little bit more neatly? And I try, but my brain just don't do it that way. So anyway, now we have our snowmen. Then you can go through and check your major thirds and minor thirds to make sure you have the quality of the chords correct. And then as a bonus, what I recommend doing is writing out the Roman numerals below each chord. And the reason why you should write the Roman numerals out, and the reason why it's a bonus, and the reason why it's good to do it, is because the more you make the connection between the chords in the harmonized scale and the Roman numeral, the easier it's going to be when you actually sit down to analyze and break down and understand the music that you love and that you really want to understand. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we are going to talk triads, specifically the reason why we want Roman numerals in order to be able to refer to triads, and then also some cool, nifty little ways that these Roman numerals have showed up in pop culture in the past. So when musicians describe a triad or how triads relate to each other, a lot of times they talk about the Roman numerals in the following ways. The 4 of C. Oh, the 4 of C. What does that mean? So the 4 of C means F, but let's break down why we're calling it the 4 of C. So we're going to say C is scale degree 1. We're going to go 2 is D, 3 is E, F is 4. So the 4 of C is F. Plus, if you know your triad quality formula, you'll know that 4 is always going to be a major triad. So the 4 of C is going to be an F chord and it's going to be a major chord. Or the 5 of the tonic, or the 5 of 1. So 1 is C, the tonic is C, the 5 would be G. And if you know your triad quality formula, major, minor, minor, major, major, you know that the chord built off of scale degree 5 is going to be a major triad. The 2 of the root. Now, if that's not confusing, I don't know what is. So a lot of times musicians will conflate. Conflate means when you take two things that are different and you confuse them as being one. So a lot of times musicians will conflate root and tonic. Tonic is when we're talking about a scale. Root is when we're talking about a chord, but a lot of times they use those interchangeably. So when they say the 2 of the root, what they actually mean is the 2 of the tonic, or the 2 of the 1, which in the scale of C major would be a D minor triad, because we're talking about 2, C, D, and we know from our triad quality formula, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, that the chord built off of scale degree 2 is going to be a minor triad. So all these different ways of describing a chord will get everyone to understand which chord is being talked about. Now, one of the advantages of understanding Roman numerals is that not all chords need to be spoken. So if you know the tonic of the scale is, for example, G, so G is 1, you instantly know that 2 is A minor, 3 is B minor, and so on. 4 would be C major, 5 would be a D major triad, and 6 would be an E minor triad. Now you can see this in action if you go onto YouTube and you watch old videos of the TV show The Late Show with David Letterman, where the band leader Paul Schaefer would hold up fingers to show the Roman numeral of the chord he wanted people to play. So all he would have to do is he'd have to turn around and yell at the band, G. Now the band knows G is 1. So then he puts up a 2. What chord does the band play? A minor. He puts up 3 fingers. What chord does the band play? B minor. He puts up 5 fingers. The band plays a D major. He puts up 4 fingers. The band plays a C major. So in addition to being able to understand and analyze the music that you want to understand and analyze, the music that you love, knowing these Roman numerals is super useful just in general for talking about music. Because as soon as you know what the 1 is, as soon as you know what the tonic is, another way of thinking about this is as soon as you know what key you're in the key of G major, G is 1, then we all know 4 is going to be C major, 5 is going to be D major, 2 is going to be A minor. So if I say play 2-5-1 in the key of G, or write 2-5-1 in the key of G, it's going to be A minor for 2, D is going to be 5, 1 is going to be G. There you go. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you're going to start to understand what happens when we harmonize a natural minor scale instead of a major scale. So just like a major scale, a triad can be built on every scale degree. You can build a snowman on every scale degree or written on every scale degree of a natural minor scale. That means you take any scale degree, you call that scale degree the root, and then you get a third and a fifth using only notes from that scale. For example, when you harmonize an A natural minor scale, you will only use notes from the A natural minor scale. And when you harmonize notes from the E natural minor scale, you will only use notes from the E natural minor scale. And this is, as you know from the major scales, called harmonizing the scale. Now, just like the step formula changed from major scales to natural minor scales, the triad quality formula also changes from a major triad quality formula to a natural minor scale triad quality formula. Natural minor scale triad quality formula goes like this: minor, skip, major, minor, major, major. One more time. It goes like this: minor, skip, major, minor, minor, major, major. We're going to look at what happens on scale degree 2 and the best music theory book for beginners 2 or course 2. Don't worry about that for now. You actually won't need it to understand a lot of the music that you want to understand, and that's why we're pushing it to course number 2. Now, the quality formula, just like with the major scales, stays the same for all natural minor scales. It does not matter what the tonic is of the scale we're looking at. We could have an E natural minor, we could have an A natural minor scale. The natural minor scale quality formula is always going to be minor, skip, major, minor, minor, major, major. Always. For example, the triad built on scale degree flat 3 is always major, and the triad built on scale degree 5 is always minor. Let's take a look at an A natural minor scale and break it down with this understanding. So already you can see we're skipping scale degree 2. Don't worry about scale degree 2. It has a totally different type of quality, a totally different name, and we're not going to worry about that right now. So don't worry about scale degree 2. That's also like telling someone not to think about pink elephants, is as soon as I tell you not to think about pink elephants, you are now thinking about a pink elephant, but don't worry about scale degree 2. So we can see that just like the major scale, we write out the natural minor scale. The root of every chord is the A natural minor scale. We have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. With scale degrees 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, and flat 7 being used. And then just like with the major scale, we're going to build a triad. We're going to build a snowman on every single note in the scale, except for scale degree 2. So you can see that we have our natural minor scale quality formula here of minor, skip, major, minor, minor, major, major, and that the chords that come off of that are A minor, C major on scale degree 3, D minor scale degree 4, E minor scale degree 5, F major scale degree 6, and G major on scale degree 7. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you're going to understand what an E natural minor scale harmonized to the 5th looks like. So in keeping with our natural minor quality formula, we're going to go minor, skip scale degree 2, major, minor, minor, major, major. And you can see that the root of all of these triads is sure enough just the E natural minor scale. We have E, we're skipping F sharp, then going to G, A, B, C, D, and then E. And then just like with the G major scale, we have an F sharp in the E natural minor scale. So all the Fs are going to be sharps. Even though we're not building a triad on scale degree 2, that F sharp, all the other Fs that appear in the triads will also be sharp. And so what we end up with is E minor, G major, A minor, B minor, C major, and D major. And that's pretty much it. It works the same exact way as the A natural minor scale harmonized to the 5th. We're just literally going to build a snowman off of every single note in the scale, except for scale degree 2. If the note of the scale starts on a line, we're going to do a snowman on the lines. If the note starts in a space, we do a snowman in the spaces. And that's how we get the E natural minor scale harmonized to the fifth. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson and the next couple of lessons, you're going to understand what it looks like when we harmonize relative scales and the connection between harmonized relative scales. So before we talk about harmonizing the relative scales, let's do a quick review to make sure you remember what relative scales are. So relative scales and relative keys. We're going to be talking about relative scales here. So for example, if we take a C major scale and we count up to scale degree 6, and then we change scale degree 6, and we're going to think about scale degree 6 as scale degree 1, and then we go up an octave using all the same notes from the C major scale, we're going to get an A natural minor scale. So we start on C, we go C, D, E, F, G, A, that's scale degree 6, and then we're going to pretend now scale degree 6 is scale degree 1, and say A, B, C, D, E, E, F, G, A, and that's going to get us our relative minor scale, which is going to be an A natural minor scale. And we can do the same thing for G major to E minor. So G, A, B, C, D, E, that's counting up 6, and then if we start on E and use all the same notes as a G major scale, so it's going to be E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, we get an E natural minor scale. So that's a relationship. And that relationship is called relative. So a C major scale to an A natural minor scale, those are relative scales. A natural minor is the relative minor scale of C major, and C major is the relative major scale of the A natural minor scale. And we can also have that same relationship between two keys. So the key of C major is the relative key of A minor, and A minor is the relative minor key of C major. The same thing with G major to E minor. So we can take a G major key, and the relative minor key is going to be E minor, and the relative major key of E minor is G major. So, and then as part of the review, here's another way of visualizing the relationship between the relative major and the relative minor keys. So we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. That's going to be scale degree 1 through 7 in a C major scale. We're going to break scale degree 6 and scale degree 7 off the back, and we're going to throw it in on the front. And that's going to get us a note order of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then all we have to do is reframe or rethink how we're approaching the scale degrees. Instead of calling scale degree 6, 6, we're going to call it 1, and then we have our natural minor scale. And this method works the same way for G major to E natural minor. In the next lesson, you're going to learn the connection between the chords and the harmonized scales when they are relative. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you're going to understand how relative harmonized scales actually share the same chords in addition to sharing the same notes and also key signatures when we look at them for keys. So let's take a look at the similarities or the common chords between C major and A natural minor. Well, if we look at our common chords here, we have C, D minor, E minor, F, G, and A minor. And hang on a second, that's 6 chords. That's all the chords we have, which means, sure enough, that all the chords in a harmonized A natural minor scale and all the chords in a harmonized C major scale are exactly the same. They're all exactly the same. And the reason for this is because, as you may remember from the previous lessons and also previous lessons where we talked about relative keys and relative scales, is that they actually share the same notes. So because they share the same notes, when we stack those notes on top of each other, when we build snowmen to make triads, we end up with the same exact chords, just in a different order, in the same way that relative scales have the same notes but in a different order. We see the same thing here. They're going to have the same chords when we harmonize them to the fifth, just in a different order. Let's take a look at a harmonized G and E natural minor scale now. So we can see our common chords are G, A minor, B minor, C, D, and E minor. And sure enough, if we look at it, they share the same exact chords. And that's because the notes in the scales are exactly the same, just in a different order. So when we go and we stack them up into triads and we harmonize the scale, they end up creating the same exact triads. Exactly the same. In summary, whenever you have relative scales, so we have G major is the relative major of E minor is the relative minor of G major. When we have that relative relationship, when we harmonize those scales, we're going to end up with the same exact chords, just in a different order, in the same way that both scales have the same notes, just in a different order. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand the connection between the major triad quality formula and the natural minor scale triad quality formula, and why the relative keys are connected in the same way that they're connected with the same chords when we harmonize them to the fifth. The scales have the same notes and the keys have the same key signature. So let's take a look at this. We're going to do the same thing we did when we understood breaking off scale degree 6 and 7 and throwing them to the front, to understand how the major scale goes from scale degree 1 to scale degree 6, and then we can think about the minor scale as starting on scale degree 6 and then going up an octave using the same exact notes as the major scale. So we can see here we have our major quality formula of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Now what happens is if we break off scale degree 6 and scale degree 7, and keep in mind, you can see scale degree 7 here, there's no chord here. We're going to get to that chord in theory 2, because that's a whole nother can of worms. So we take scale degree 6 and scale degree 7, and we throw them to the front of the line. So we have a minor and a skip. So we take the minor and the skip, and we put them at the beginning in the same way we can put scale degree 6 and scale degree 7. We looked at it right up here, scale degree 6 and scale degree 7 from the scale, going to the front. We're doing the same exact thing here. We're just looking at it instead of scale degrees. We're looking at it with the triad quality formula. Then we have minor, skip, major, minor, minor, major, major. And then we end up with that formula of minor, skip, major, minor, minor, major, major. So another way of thinking about this is right here, we have the major triad quality formula going major, minor, minor, major, major, and then it ends here with minor. And all we're doing is we're taking that last minor in the skip and we're putting it in front of that major triad formula, going minor, skip, now it's the major, major, minor, minor, major, major. I will see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, you are going to understand how to write triads from the natural minor scale. So, as you learned in the last couple of lessons, when we harmonize a major and a relative minor scale, we get the same exact chords, just in a different order. In the same way that when we have those scales, when they're not harmonized, they have the same exact notes. They share the same notes, just in a different order. So a quick review on Roman numerals. Lowercase Roman numerals are for minor triads, and uppercase Roman numerals are for major triads. So let's take a look at our natural minor scale quality formula here. Just the minor chords, we're going to have minor 1, minor 4, and minor 5. The major chords, we're going to have major 3, major 6, and major 7. And when we put the whole thing together, we'll have minor, skip, major, minor, minor, major, major, which sure enough is our natural minor scale triad quality formula. So here's an example of an E natural minor scale harmonized to the fifth, also using Roman numerals to express the quality of each chord, whether it's major, whether it's minor, and also what scale degree it's built on, whether it's built on scale degree 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. Take a look at that for a moment. You can also come back to this in your book. We're also going to take a peek at the A natural minor scale, Harmonized to the fifth with Roman numerals here. And sure enough, we can see it's all lining up with minor, skip, major, minor, minor, major, major. The Roman numerals are agreeing with the quality formula. We also have the chord symbols that are agreeing with the quality formula, and also with the scale degrees, interestingly, as well. So to actually write a harmonized natural minor scale to the fifth, you're going to write out the natural minor scale with a treble clef and a double bar line. You're going to add your chord symbols above the staff. Step number 2 is you build a snowman on every single scale degree except for scale degree 2. We're going to skip scale degree 2. And then you add in your accidentals. Now, to harmonize a natural minor scale to the fifth with the key signature, all you need to do is write your treble clef, your key signature, your double bar line, write your natural minor scale, add your chord symbols, and then just build snowmen. And because the key signature is going to make all the Fs sharp, for example, in the case of E minor, in the case of A minor, you don't actually need to put anything in the key signature, remember, because there's no sharp or flat notes in the key of C major or A minor, and those are the relative keys. Then you're done. As a bonus, add in the Roman numerals underneath, because making a really solid connection between the chords, the scale, the key, and the Roman numerals is going to be really important in the next chapter, which we are about to head into, called Analysis 1, Degrees and Numerals. I will see you in the next lesson for the last chapter and the last module in this course. I'll see you there. Oh, but it's not over yet. Click here to watch the next video lesson, or up here for the full video playlist.